Assalamu alaikum, you bundles of sticks. All right, I want to talk today about the aftermath of the Nick Fuentes interview with Piers Morgan and all the internet drama going on with his wife. And I also want to tie that into the whole internet drama with Akash Singh and his wife, Jasleen, and talk about, in general, this whole phenomenon of celebrity wives going crazy and disrespecting their man on the internet. Before I get into that, obligatory channel plug. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, or
you are gay.
There's been a string of celebrity wives who've been going on the internet and just bad-mouthing these dudes or embarrassing them in some fashion. If you guys don't know, Piers Morgan's wife, Carlene or something like that, was posting selfies of her with other men in her bed that aren't her husband and all sorts of haram things.
Haram!
That I can't even mention on YouTube. I think that the question to understand is, why is this happening? Because it's a kind of a strange phenomenon if you think about it. Because on paper, these guys are successful chads. I'm not saying Piers Morgan is a chad in the sense that, he's this alpha male or what have. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that because he is very successful, very famous, and has a lot of money, he basically is a chad more or less to most women. And most women, on paper, would be happy to have a man as successful as him. Same thing with Akash, same thing with Steph Curry from the Golden State Warriors, and the same thing, of course, with our boy Will Smith. There are two main takeaways of why I think this is happening. I think the one takeaway, which is the less obvious one, is these women made a deal with the devil. Now, what do I mean by that? These women who sought and wanted to marry high-status, rich dudes, they wanted to do that, but what they didn't realize was the cost of having a high-status lifestyle, being wealthy, blah, blah, blah. And the cost is, namely, that those guys are usually not around that much. They're not going to be the husband that's going to come home after the 9 to 5 and play with the kids and give you attention. So I think a lot of it is just really the basic psychology and economics of relationships where the women aren't getting enough attention at home. And I'm not talking about, the what stuff. I mean just emotionally and relationally. They're probably not emotionally available. They're not asking her how she's doing and sending her cute little texts and blah, blah, blah. They're out busy working. I mean, a lot of times they're traveling, especially if you're a famous actor like Will Smith, you gotta be on set. Or if you're like Akash, you gotta be on tour, you gotta be on the road 40 weeks a year. Or Steph Curry traveling for games. They're not physically around. I think a lot of the women, they build up resentment towards that just on a practical level because women want attention. I mean, we all know that. That's not controversial. But this is the price they pay for marrying a man of that status. And you don't ever hear these women clamoring to sell their house and go buy a modest 4-bedroom in rural Iowa. So, no, they want to still keep living that high life, but they don't want to have to deal with the consequences of it, namely of having a husband who's not around all that much. That's not to excuse what they're doing, because I think ultimately this is the deal they made with the devil, that this is the kind of man you're going to be with, this is the kind of life you're going to have. You want to drive these nice cars, live in the big house in LA, or live in the townhouse in Greenwich Village. Hey, that's what you got to do. And I think a lot of women, they say that they want to marry this guy, this high-status dude, and they don't want to pay the price for it. And the other thing I think what's causing this, the more insidious one, which is that modern women are raised in this culture and conditioned to look down upon and compete with men. Any woman pretty much born after the sexual revolution, which these women all are, even Jada, I think is probably the oldest one, has been raised in this feminist slop of you go girl, get educated, be independent, yada, yada, yada. We all heard Taylor Swift. We all know. But they're raised in this culture and raised to be this way. And then they marry a guy who is leagues more successful and talented than they are. And they can't handle that. Not because it makes them feel insecure in the sense that, oh no, I'm not good enough for him. What I think it is more so, oh no, this is it? In other words, they have nowhere else to go. I mean, once you marry a rich, successful guy who's famous and blah, 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 what else is there to accomplish? You've been trained your whole life. You got to achieve. You got to be independent. You can be ambitious and yada, yada, yada. And when you marry a rich, successful guy and you get everything you want on paper, that's what I think a lot of this is too, is like the modern culture we live in trains women to think and feel this way and reinforces that through everything. And then when you find a man who is on paper a good man, successful, has all these things beyond anything you could achieve on your own, you get resentful because it's like, what about me? What about, you see this with Aisha Curry. She talked about being envious of her husband's success and why he gets attention from all these women. And Steph Curry's a good dude. I mean, he's one of the biggest players in the league right now. I mean, she hit the lottery marrying him, their high school sweetheart. It's like a fairy tale, and she's still not happy because basically the culture trained her to not be happy. That even when you marry this Prince Charming of a man who's tall, good-looking, athletic, very successful, it's still not enough. And I think that's very sad. I mean, obviously with the Will Smith Jada thing, Jada's talented, but Will Smith is on top of Hollywood. He was the man. But the point is that the women aren't happy because they're not trained to be happy. They're not trained to be grateful. They're not trained to go, I'm with a good man. They didn't grow up with soft girl era TikTok reels and things like that. The important lesson for us as men to take from that is we got to know what we're dealing with when it comes to the women we interact with. I think also, too, that's a good cautionary tale to say that just because you're this Chad is not enough, because it's not. You got to be respectable, but you got to teach her and coach her on how to be respectful because they're not taught to do that by anybody, not their mothers, not their fathers, certainly not the culture, not Taylor Swift. I know it's a little bit of a shorter video, but let me know in the comments what you guys think. Am I right? Am I just excusing simpery? Am I excusing haramness from women? Haram! Let me know in the comments. And again, thank you guys for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, or you're a